Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, this is Wayne Callan for Attitude Magazine. Today's topic, your back-to-school game plan, is on every parent's mind whose child is starting the new school year. Doing the right prep work before school and following up after school begins can mean the difference between your child succeeding at school or struggling through it. We are very fortunate to have Zeigler Dendy to give us all a detailed roadmap for kids and parents. She is the author of Teenagers with ADD and ADHD and Teaching Teens with ADD, ADHD, and Executive Function Deficits. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here and always honored when Attitude asked me to present at one of their webinars. And I just want to take a moment to compliment Wayne and Stuart for all the work they do. You know, Wayne is the editor of the Attitude Magazine, and they always do such an excellent job. So I feel very fortunate to be working with them. Our title is, of course, Your Back to School Game Plan, and you do whatever it takes to help your child succeed. First of all, I want to share just a couple of big picture issues and make a couple of general statements. First of all, everyone's back to school plan is going to be different because your child may have simple ADHD or complex ADHD, and so you have to tailor the plan to your child's needs. The major question I think each parent faces is my child happy at school, and are they being successful? And if the answer is no, then you absolutely must be involved and ensure that they are successful in school. You have to play detective. You have to educate yourself. You have to learn about all the common learning problems these children face. And I really believe what Ross Greene says. Our children will do well if they can. And so this piece of advice is very important. Succeeding in school is the most therapeutic thing that can happen to a child with ADHD. So you must do whatever it takes to help your child succeed. And don't let what other people say deter you, family members or teachers. And the second major point is you need to educate everyone involved. And on the next slide, we'll talk about what you can do there. Well, first of all, I say educate yourself and your child and your family about ADHD and executive function deficits. And there are some things like 10 key basic facts that are available on my website, and you see an address as the D bullet down there. You need to understand executive function. If you don't understand that, then you really need to read up on it. You also need to learn about the Common Learning Challenge. I'm going to speak to you as though my son Alex were still in school and the things that I would be doing in order to help him. First of all, I didn't realize that our children had trouble memorizing letters, numbers, multiplication tables, and it begins to look to you as though it's choice and laziness. But there are serious memorization problems, and these are all related to deficits in executive functions. Our children read and they forget what they read. So reading comprehension is a major problem. Our children have trouble writing essays. They have trouble completing complex math. And this is the killer. They have real difficulty completing long-term projects because they forget until the night before. I know most of you have experienced that. Now, the other part about executive function that you need to read up on are what I call academically related skills. I had no idea that getting started was an executive skill. And I thought that was laziness and just not wanting to try. But there are really chemical differences in the brains of our children that make it difficult for them to start. They have more trouble following directions. They can't remember them. They have trouble being organized. They have trouble remembering chores, analyzing and problem solving and planning for the future. And all these are linked to deficits in executive functions. And you have to teach your child and provide the structure that they need to be successful with those. Gradually and tactfully educate the teacher about ADHD. And you want to start small, maybe just a simple one-pager. You don't want to overwhelm them. And, you kind of feel your teacher out. They may already be pretty smart about ADHD. Some parents, one parent, I did a poll of people on Facebook for suggestions, and one parent actually gives teachers books that they think might be helpful. If the teacher does seem interested, then share your favorite school-related books or handouts or whatever. But if you will check out either Attitude or my website, you'll find many more resources that will help you know what to do and how to help your child. Now for Alex, by the time he'd been in school a few years, I realized that he had terrible struggles. But sadly, I didn't know enough to know what that was all about. So if you know your child is going to struggle, then your planning really should begin in the spring so that you can talk to the teacher and influence the schedule and the teacher that is assigned to your child. Now, principals don't like for you to say, I want Mrs. Jones. So rather you say something like, I'd like a teacher like Miss Smith if possible. She's patient, she understands ADHD and learning disabilities. And so you, of course, document, or your principal knows that your child is really struggling. The third point there is to adjust your IEP or Section 504 plan for the coming year. And let me make a key point here. I think a Section 504 plan is critical for most of our kids, for all of our kids who are really struggling, because when they go away to college, if they don't have some sort of plan documenting the struggles they face, it's much more difficult to get accommodations in college. Before school begins, go in and meet with the teacher and take your child with you. And, just friendly, getting to know her. And then again, I would take a shot at the open house and spend a little more time with her and tell her that you'd like to follow up in a couple of weeks. If your child is really struggling, I would also recommend that you meet with a guidance counselor because that is often the voice of reason that you can find at school that will be a great help to you. Some of my friends have done things like I always recommended that you write a letter, outline the child's strengths, his challenges, accommodations, what's worked in the past. And if this is a teacher who doesn't know your child, I would actually include a picture because that just adds an element of humanness and it's personal, makes your child a real person. And I love the suggestion from Mary Durheim. She created a little booklet for her granddaughter who was starting school, all about me. And so this is a unique way to introduce your child to the teacher. Now, Pam Glidden, on the other hand, had her son, who was older, write a self-advocacy statement talking about things like my strengths and my challenges and how you can help me. And I thought that was an extraordinary idea, just a fantastic idea to try that. Someone, I think maybe Jill Murphy, suggested that a former teacher might come to the teacher meeting that you have because they know your child and can help with suggestions. I also suggest you set up a regular communication system with the teacher, exchanging emails. And some of our children will need a crisis plan. Mine did. And so in high school, we had a crisis plan worked out. Alex, if you ever feel like you're about to blow up, go to the guidance counselor. And that can be very helpful. I also looked for the voice of reason at school. Sometimes it's his teacher, sometimes it's the guidance counselor. One year for us, it was the vice principal. Someone who understands ADHD, has compassion, and really wants to help your child succeed. Try to get ready ahead of time. Sometimes children with ADHD have parents with ADHD, and we tend to procrastinate. So be sure a month early or so you get the general health checkup. Make sure the ADHD medicines are right. Establish or set up a family calendar and mark important back-to-school dates. Be sure you have a school supply list and purchase supplies. And someone, I think maybe Jill Murphy, suggested buying extra supplies for the teacher. As you know, teachers pay a lot of money out of pocket, so extra paper, extra pencils or pens. And I think it was Ann Sackerson who also recommended giving fidget toys to teachers in younger grades or other supplies. And one person suggested giving books. So buy any needed clothes before school starts because you just don't want to be caught at the end rushing around trying to get everything ready. After school starts, I put down establish, but I think I would say establish and maintain a positive relationship with the teacher. In what terms of I want to work with you, I want my child to be successful, swap emails, please email me within the first week or two if you see anything that you're concerned about. Establish a meeting with the teacher within the first couple of weeks to exchange information and plan any interventions if needed. If the student is likely to struggle, I'd ask for a weekly email update. And, teachers are busy, so you might be willing to email her and say, how is he doing? So she doesn't have to remember to do this for you. The other thing I would mention here, and this may not be, well, I'll wait until the next one, bullet or two, but get involved at school. Attend the open house, get involved in the PTA, volunteer. I was in the school all the time. I served as PTA president. I knew my child was struggling, and I needed all the brownie points for him that I could get. So I also say establish routines. And one thing I had to watch about is I almost became a school Nazi. It's like my son would sometimes dread to see me coming. So, particularly when I greeted him at the door, and I didn't even say, hello, I love you, how was your day? I would say, you got your books? Because I knew this was such an ongoing problem. So establish routines about homework, bedtime, and meals, and guidelines for homework and electronic use. Now, with regard to homework, I have lots of tips on how to help children remember to get home with their homework. But one of my favorite is Dr. Billy Abney, my sister, shared with me, and her students suggested it. And the software is called Remind 101. And it's a free app. And parents sign up, kids sign up, teachers sign up. Teachers type in the homework assignment, and it's sent out to both the parent and the kid. And it's wonderful because this really helps our kids' impaired memory. Bedtime is often an issue. Part of it is they have sleep issues. So if that's a big issue for you, talk with your doctor about that. With regard to homework, give them choices. They feel like they have so little control. Where would you like to set up your homework place? If they're working pretty independently, their room is fine. I always trapped Alex in the kitchen with me at the kitchen table so that I could keep an eye on him. And just remember, too, if their medicine is worn off, they're going to have a terrible time getting started on their homework. So a lot of doctors will prescribe maybe 5 milligrams of Ritalin or something like that to help them get through the homework time. I also like Kathleen Nadeau's idea. I've been recommending it for years, but I like her cute term for it, a launch pad. Set up a place near the door where the child is leaving the next morning. Put all homework in, signed papers, everything. Backpack on the table, that's a launch pad. So that, or gym clothes or band instruments so that nothing is forgotten. In transitioning to a new school, this is always tough. And I would say to you, beware of the transition to middle and high school. Because what happens here is our children are chronologically 12 or so, but developmentally they're more like 8. So teachers assume they're really 12, and they place these demands for executive skills that expand exponentially. And to be truthful, our children aren't capable of doing all of that, and that's why you need to be involved and provide extra support. Their brain does continue maturing until their 30s, but you realize our children have a 3-year delay in brain maturation. So pretty much these facts on here are just repetitions of things I mentioned earlier, but would need to be done at a new school. Sometimes in transitions, our children don't have spatial awareness and can get lost and go the longest way to class and be late. So those are some things to consider. So I want to mention just a couple of other things, mainly just a statement about accommodations that might be commonly used. Extended time would be one, of course. Some shortened assignments would also be one. Getting Remind 101, the software included in an IEP would be helpful. Having a note taker. So those are some of the things. And sometimes when you're trying to get things squared away, you might have your child email their homework to school. Or I know Terry Maitland said things were so rough with her child who struggled that she completed all homework at school. So in wrapping up, I would just like to leave you with these thoughts. Succeeding in school is the most important thing that can happen to your child. Children who are happy in school are less likely to get in trouble, less likely to drop out of school, less likely to get into drugs. So you must do whatever it takes to help your child succeed. And as Ross Greene says, our children will do well if they can, and it's our responsibility to help them be successful. And I wish you all good luck and a wonderful school year.
That's a very good overview, Chris. Very good. I learned a lot. As you would imagine, our moms and dads have loads and loads of questions. So I'll start with Katie, who said, my child had a very rough year last year. The teacher didn't buy into his diagnosis, and life was very difficult for our family. At what point should a parent consider changing schools or even homeschooling?
Well, one of the things I might do in a situation like that, this actually happened to my son in first grade, and I was didn't want to make waves, but you might consider going to the principal and ask possibly for a transfer to another class. A lot of times our children are invested in the schools that they're in. Their friends are there, and that may not be what they want to do. Or sometimes meeting with the principal, and sometimes they'll do some shaping up of the teachers involved. And I think there was more to that question toward the end. You know, homeschooling is something that certainly people do, but if you can get the public school system to be responsive to your needs, and maybe it's not too late this year to go to the principal and say, can you please, last year the teacher really didn't believe me, didn't believe in ADHD. Is this teacher going to be understanding of ADHD? And I would either take my husband, my spouse with me, or I would take an educational advocate, because I remember laughing. Here I was supposedly an expert, and I go to a meeting and I felt like awful, like a bad guy. I'd always been wearing the white hat in school meetings, and suddenly I was wearing the black hat, and there were all these other representatives across the table from me who thought my son was awful. So don't be like me. Don't be too reserved. Fight for your child. Talk to your principal and say, this did not work last year. This is damaging my child's self-esteem. How can you help me? Like I say, sometimes some school systems have educational advocates or people in the community, and it may be that you need a Section 504. It sounds to me like that teacher needs some training.
That's very good advice. Susan has a question. She said, my 7-year-old son is going into the 2nd grade. He has ADHD and dyslexia. Our biggest challenge, as I'm sure a lot of parents will relate to, is completing homework. He will either rush through his homework, making a lot of errors in the process, or get sidetracked, and it may take all evening to complete. He takes Vyvanse in the morning to get through the school day, but it usually is wearing off by the time he leaves school. Do you have any tips to help him focus on his homework?
Well, we're basically asking your son to do the impossible, to focus when his medicine that helps him focus is totally worn off. So one of the things, couple of things, not just medicine that you might consider, and I'm not a physician, but talk to your doctor to see if he would consider giving you something like 5 milligrams of Ritalin or some Focalin or something in the evening. So, he takes it at 4 or 5 so that he can make it through his homework. The other thing you can do, exercise is one of the only other things that we have found that really can help ADHD. So you make it fun. You do a problem or two, depending, he's young, so his attention span is very short. And then go out and shoot a couple of baskets or run with him or catch and throw a ball. Because what we know when you exercise is you increase blood flow to the brain. So maybe he wants to dance, play the song Happy, have both of you dance together. But you tell him, I love to tell him, what is his, well, I won't ask you, let's just pretend his name is Alex. I would say, Alex, did you know that when you exercise or dance, that it helps your brain work better? So it's like you're educating them so he understands why you're asking him to do that. So you do a couple of problems with him. The other thing is maybe there's too much homework. If he's in the second grade, he shouldn't be doing more than maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes per grade level. There's just kind of this rule of thumb that the PTA put out. So if it's taking longer than that, then one of the things it's telling you is your son may have slow processing speed. And so the length of the assignment needs to be reduced. My son had slow processing speed. He was a slow reader, slow writer. Homework took forever. Tests took forever. So I hope maybe a combination of those 3 ideas would be helpful to you.
Jackie has a question about her daughter. My 9-year-old daughter attends a 4th grade public charter school who has little resource for disabilities, no aids, and so on. We have a limited 504 plan. Can we also have an IEP?
Well, you could possibly. They're harder to get, but what you might be more successful with is getting an educational consultant and expanding the 504 that you have, because in many ways you can get almost all the same supports through 504 that you can through IDEA. I mean, the kinds of things our kids need, like extended time or reduced assignments. So part of it is playing detective and figuring out exactly what is the problem, what is causing, him to struggle. I'm just trying to think, I'm not a kind of person who pushes my materials that I've developed, but I will tell you this. Everything that I have written, I developed because I needed it when my child was in school and it was not available. And my Teaching Teens book, even though it says Teaching Teens, could be helpful to someone all the way down to 4th grade. And what you can do is look up, all right, what is causing the problem? Is he not finishing his work? Is he disorganized? Is he losing things? And I give specific suggestions for things you can do to help him, and you could possibly get some of those things incorporated into a 504 plan. But I think having a local advocate, a local educational consultant go with you, when I told you earlier about the meeting I went to, I was just a parent, and I felt awful. I just felt degraded and disrespected. So what you need is somebody else. I might be an expert, but that didn't matter. I needed somebody else there who was an expert to kind of back me up. And so someone that is not emotionally invested, if you can find somebody like that.
Would it ever be productive, I think you might have mentioned this, to find a teacher who had worked well with your student to come to the meeting? Would that provide some support and direction?
Oh, yes. Great idea, Wayne. Perfect. Exactly. And, in fact, we had that happen here in this county where a child did fine in one grade and went to the next, and this male teacher who was very respected would go and meet with the other teachers to help them understand. But, what I'm hearing here are general statements, and if she can identify specific statements, what is causing the problem? That's where you have to play detective. Is he forgetting his homework? Is he not completing his homework? Is he not paying attention in class? Is he on medication? One of the most common problems our kids face is that in the general community, most of our children are on doses of medicine that are too low for peak effectiveness. And the other thing that happens when you reach middle school is because of the hormonal changes, medicines that worked fine in grades K through 4 or 5 no longer work as well. Our children can build up tolerance. So in middle school, you really need to be on top of that and pay attention to what's happening with the medicine.
Danielle has a question. My son is entering 8th grade. It has been difficult to secure 504 accommodations because he gets good grades. I was told he would never qualify for an IEP because he earns good grades. How do I prove my son needs help, even if it is just to maintain his 504?
Well, interestingly enough, amendments were passed to Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Section 504 is part of that act. In January of this year, January of 12, a ruling came out, a policy ruling, saying that Congress was disappointed that so many people had defined this so narrowly, and that people who had previously not been eligible should be reconsidered. And one of the specific points they made is you don't have to be failing to get a Section 504 plan. And they also made the point that if a child's on medication, you cannot take that into consideration, and you cannot take into consideration that the parents are doing a ton of work at home. So if this person wants to email me, I will send them my summary of Section 504 and what the law says and what the revisions were, along with specific citations from the actual law. And unfortunately, a lot of schools aren't aware of that. In one of the area schools where I work, I took that document in, and it had not been distributed to my local school. So some people are still unaware of those changes. He should be eligible for a 504 plan, and a good one.
Very good.
My email is just my name, chris@chrisdendy.com.
Now we have a licensed professional counselor named Jessica who coordinates with teachers in schools often. One of the challenges she runs into is not offending teachers or offering suggestions without telling a teacher how to run their class. Can you give any kind of tips for gently educating teachers on accommodations for ADHD?
Well, that is always a tough one, and I probably would need to think a little bit about that. I always went in as friendly as possible and non-adversarial and one-on-one, and took a very humble stance. I'm just concerned about Alex and the fact that he's not doing well, and I would like to offer you, maybe give her a one-page fact sheet, or if this teacher has really dug in and this counselor finds that they're so stuck in their ways they're never going to change, then this may be a time to consider asking for a change of placement for the child. It's just, no child should have to experience a whole year being miserable, and it's just so damaging to their self-esteem. I mean, our children can be damaged, their self-esteem can be damaged as early as 2nd grade. And I know in high school, one teacher had the nerve to say to my child, I know your mother babies you, but I am not going to baby you. And this was in front of the whole class. Oh
boy.
You know, just people are changing. But, you know, I went through, I'm going to be doing a session at the CHAD conference, and one is called Bringing About Change in the Community. And I spent 6 years trying to, from a time when I came in and there were no IEPs and no 504s for ADHD, to a time that they are now considering it. And so, you know, I laid my Section 504 summary document in front of her, and I said, this is what the latest policy is from OCR. And because we had worked on some cases together and had developed respect of each other, she actually listened to me. And for the first time, they had provided Section 504 training for their teachers. It's not easy. Wonderful. It's not easy. You just, and it takes longer than you want it to take. Sorry, I feel like I let her down.
No, I think you gave a good answer. But playing off that, is there any way that parents can band together or commune so that they can raise awareness of all of this in their community? Is there any, or is it just each person takes it on him or herself?
Well, interestingly enough, Katie Galitznik in Wisconsin was at a private Catholic school, and she invited me in, got the school to invite me in, and I did training for them. And one of the teachers afterwards talked to her son, and it was like night and day. You know, I now understand what's going on because I show, the training can help. As a former teacher, I use pictures and show them, you know, the difference in the brains of our kids, the fact that their reward system doesn't work properly, so that when they need to get started on something difficult, there's not sufficient brain chemistry there to help them do that. And that's why they need an external reminder. And I say those kinds of things to kids. I'll say, Alex, honey, people with ADHD have trouble getting started on their homework, and it's not because they're lazy. It's because your brain chemistry works a little differently. So with your permission, I'd like to I'm going to give you these external reminders. And that seems to work. But this, you know, if folks are coming to CHAD, check out that workshop. Plus, I'm doing a 3-hour pre-conference on success in school, and so much more detailed information. It'll be in Chicago in November.
We'll post that afterwards, after the webinar's over, just to remind everyone. A mom named Bliss asks, I have a gifted, soon-to-be 5th grader that has not memorized her math facts yet. How can I tell if her aversion to math is due to her strong will or an LD? She also outright says no when we ask her to read or do homework. How can I motivate her in a positive way so we can have a happier home?
Well, it sounds like this young woman has some complex learning problems, and trying to get to the bottom of those is, maybe tough. Repeat a little bit of what you said. I know she's gifted, and I know that she has trouble memorizing her math facts, and she's about to go into 5th grade. Yeah.
And she tends to be a little oppositional when her mother asks her to do it, mm-hmm. and the mother doesn't want to yell at her or cause any more drama in their life. So she's just saying, is there a positive, quieter way to motivate her?
Well,
maybe, go ahead.
Motivation is not really the issue here in many ways. This is a difference in brain chemistry that makes it almost impossible, difficult for her to do. You know, I don't know if she's on medication. Medication can certainly help. If she's in the 5th grade, there's this there's a software program that helps kids memorize multiplication tables, and it's kind of, you usually do it much earlier. Times table's a fun way, and they have videotape. By this time, though, in 5th grade, they should be giving her a calculator and not expecting her to have memorized those facts, because it's slowing her down in her learning the next key facts she needs to learn. There are memory strategies that I list in my Teaching Teens book. It involves more hands-on, active learning, drawing pictures, taking a break in between when you're trying to learn. Memorization is really tough because of our impaired working memory, slow retrieval of information, and that sort of thing. If she's oppositional, I remember once sitting on the steps with Alex and just kind of saying, it's putting myself in the position of, I need your help. I don't know how to help you with these subjects that you're avoiding. Help me understand how I can help you. What is it about this that you hate? And again, the question is she on medication at night to help her get through this? She could have a learning disability and whatever it is that she's attempting. Or you may have to sit down and do it with her, but say, okay, we're going to take a break in 15 minutes. You can go dance, listen to music, go shoot baskets, go jump on the trampoline and come back. Because remember, that increases blood flow to the brain and helps them do better. So it would help me to know more what she's oppositional about. If it's reading, it may be reading comprehension. And again, if she's not on medicine, it's going to be very hard to do. So if she's ever been tested, I'd like to know, what does the achievement test show? Is she weak in writing, memory, math? Where are her difficulties? Trying to find maybe an academic coach, someone who can give her some tutoring that may be able to help. Just remember the advice from Dr. Green. Children will do well if they can. So something is going on here that I can't identify with the limited information I have, but I would urge you to contact an educational specialist, possibly have the student tested, evaluated, or looking at the current evaluation results and get somebody to help you understand, okay, where you tend to avoid stuff you're not good at. If it's math, she's going to avoid it. And I imagine she's had trouble being successful. It's kind of like beating your head against the wall. You try as hard as everybody else, but you get a B and they get an A.
Technology. A lot of questions about apps, etc. Lydia asks, what is the best tool for planning and organizing time for an ADHD student? Is there a best app that you recommend for kids with ADD?
Well, the trick is it almost has to be one that they pick. And I'm trying to think, it may be something as simple as their schedule on their computer or on their phone. And here's a guy from Georgia Tech, a professor at Georgia Tech, whose son simply wanted a 3x5 card, maybe a 4x6 card that the subjects were written on. He wrote down his assignments on that and then stuck it in his pocket and carried it from class to class. That worked best for them. I'm sure there are others, and I'm probably not the best person to know, but sometimes if it gets too techy and too complex, they get caught up in the technology, and then they can't get back to the work they want to do. And so I would need a few more details about specifics. I do know a couple of software programs I like, not so much for organization, but the Remind 101 to get the assignments home. There's another software program called Dexteria and Dexteria Junior. You know, many of our children have hand-eye coordination problems, poor writing, and these, to me, look like very good software programs that could help enhance their motor coordination.
Right.
I wish I knew more. I'm just trying to think if anything else comes to mind. Maybe you know something, Wayne.
I don't have them at the tip of my tongue, but I mean, we can go back and put them on our site as we think about that. If any come across, or as well as the magazine, we'll put them on there.
Okay, well, I know there's one and I'm having trouble. It's like a mind mapping kind of software for inspiration. They have inspiration and kidspiration, and that's more for organizing ideas, trying to, like map out written essays they want to do and that sort of thing. So, but as far as time, trying to keep it on, I keep mine on my calendar and on my Apple computer, and that's very helpful to me. And of course, you're also going to be putting on the family calendar, all right, this project is due then, this project is due then. And what I always say is get in the 504 plan that a parent will be notified when a long-term project is due, because we know that the delay in time and their impaired sense of time makes it very difficult for them to do those projects well.
What about, we've had several questions about non-electronic ADHD-friendly planners that you write in. Do you have any recommendations there, or?
Well, let me think. I have to laugh because a lot of schools, there's no easy answer on that. That's why I'm kind of chuckling to myself, I guess, because schools tend to force planners on kids, and you will use it. And then our kids lose it and don't write in it. And, it's just, I think they have more difficulty with a traditional non-electronic unless you can develop something very simple for them that maybe they help develop. Gosh, I feel like I ought to know something on this one, but do you have any suggestions?
Once again, I'm guilty as I don't have any right here, but we can put some on our website, and I'm sure we have some on our website already. It's just eluding me right now.
Well, there's so much technology and non-technology to use today. It's just hard to keep it in your brain. And so I will be looking like everyone else to see what your suggestions are, and then I'm probably going to go, oh, yeah, I remember that one. I meant to do that one.
One mother has a very serious question about the fifth grade teachers basically shaming her son to the point where he now feels stupid and like an academic failure. He went through a severe depression and now hates school. Any suggestions to help him think well of himself and or to help him tolerate school?
Well,
it's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. One of the things I always try to do with Alex, you have to remember for him, school was 30 years ago. He's an adult now, and ADHD wasn't recognized or treated or recognized under 504 any IDEA. And so he was shamed by teachers, and the self-esteem can be damaged as early as second grade. So, this cannot be allowed to continue in the classroom. I would get him out of that classroom if necessary, out of that school. First, though, I would go to the principal. And can she find a voice of reason at that school? Somebody who's going to say, this is absolutely not okay. And sometimes you use connections, like, does she know the superintendent of schools or the principal personally? Is there some influential person that she can have intercede with her on her behalf with a principal? That should never occur. That shows their lack of understanding about ADHD. And you can hear this. I'm furious about this. Now, to help him avoid that and not be beaten down by that, I would do some things, help him find success outside the classroom. Is he good in sports? Is he good in art? Is he good in Scouts? And drag him toward those things in which he can be successful and build self-esteem. Sometimes it's a religious group, a church where he's a leader, or, I would take Alex and a friend, make sure he's got at least one really good friend if that's an issue, because we know from research that is therapeutic. But that is, he's starting the new year. Is he going to, well, you don't know the answer. I assume that's last year. But yes. I would meet with the principal right away and say, they shamed my son all year. This is terribly damaging to our child's self-esteem. We also know that our children are at a slightly greater risk of getting depressed more easily and considering suicide. And I hate to throw that out, but it is a reality. It doesn't happen very often. But this worries me. This needs to be addressed. And even if it means a different school or homeschooling or something, and now they have so many amazing homeschooling groups and communities. I prefer to stay in the public school, but if that's what she needs to do, and she needs to take her spouse and maybe another advocate to make the point, this is not acceptable. No child should be bullied at school, especially by a teacher. Whew, I was on a soapbox for that one.
Actually, in response to a planner, one of the participants of the webinar suggested you can do a daily check sheet for students in high school. Student takes single sheet of paper with them from class to class, writes assignment in specific box on sheet, and teachers initial it. And that was her suggestion, Janet's suggestion. So
yeah, I
sometimes
like that.
Simple is better.
Yes, sometimes simple is definitely better. Now, some guys like gadgets and here's another one. The kid walks up to the board, takes his iPhone, if they allow phones, or smartphone, takes a picture of the homework assignment.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
Or takes a picture of the notes. And my sister does that, lets students do that. Someone else suggested it too, but I can't remember who it was. But there are things like that can help them keep up with their planning. And more and more, they're letting kids bring phones as long as they're being responsible with them.
Right. A couple of questions about IEPs and 504s. Parents ask, are they just relegated, are they just developed for academic challenges? Because a couple of parents have mentioned that their kids are fine academically, but that their emotions, their behavioral challenges get in the way of them learning. And they wondered if they could develop a 504 or IEP around those behavioral challenges.
Absolutely. There's something, and I'm not the best expert on this for sure. I'm skimming through some of my files now to look up Section 504, but it has to be considered functional behavior too, which refers to their emotions, refers to their social skills, and we know that our social skills in our children are delayed. So let me see if I can pull this up right quick and read the part about the, it says now, the major life activities include learning, reading, concentrated thinking, communicating, and neurological and brain functioning. So not only is it just the academics, but it has to be broader than that. their functional behavior. How are they getting along in the world? And of course, if it is an IEP, you want to try to get it under the other health impairment category, because I've seen kids who were classified under learning disabilities, and when they got better, they said, okay, you're better now, you're no longer eligible. But with Section 505, with other health impairment, it would continue for some time. But I know I've seen the term functional behavior, that needs to be addressed. And so
Yes.
It is broader than just academics. And by the way, I commend you. The latest Attitude magazine has this huge section on IEPs and 504s, and so probably she can find some of her answers in there.
Yeah, I think so. This is more of a question about a kid going to college. My son has no idea what he would like to pursue in college and is overwhelmed by the decision to not only select a university, but the decision on a major. Is there any way that I can sort of manage his overwhelm with this? Any way to sort of help him stay rational and calm about this?
Well, some people are even considering like taking a year off, particularly because of our kids' delayed immaturity. And maybe that would mean taking a class or two at a local college with some time to think. Now, a lot of our children, particularly the inattentive ones, have trouble making decisions, and they're perfectionists, and they're so afraid that they will make a mistake. So as a parent, she might try to listen to him and say, okay, it sounds to me like you like these two universities best, or these three, and maybe one of his friends is going there, and that would help him ease into that transition. And then maybe go visit the college, this extra semester where he attends college locally, might give him some time to go and visit. And they do have some great tests to show interest. My son took something called the Strong Interest Inventory. Strong Interest Inventory. And it lists all these careers, and it says things like, it asks you questions, do you like this or this better? And in the end, they say, your answers are most like people in this field. And Alex is like a photographer or a police officer, definitely not a teacher, definitely not an accountant. You can understand that, attention to detail. But once you get into college, and maybe even in high school, you can take that interest inventory, which just basically validates what you already know. And remember also, in the first 2 years of college, you're taking basic courses. So you have some time. And if you can do like the equivalent of an internship, or not an internship, but if he thinks he's interested in a certain thing, have him see if you can line up a friend or a contact. You can get him in there to volunteer for a week or two and get a feel for it, because he may then decide, that's not really what I want. So he's gonna need more guidance. My son would sometimes reach a point where he was almost in a state of paralysis, afraid to make a decision for fear it was wrong.
One last question, and it's about 504s again. In fact, some of my daughter's high school teachers have a copy of her Section 504, yet they do not follow it. For example, chunking or breaking down a big project into manageable tasks. What are my alternatives here?
Well, if they're not complying, just trying to think the most tactful way to do this, maybe meet with each of them and say, it's really important that you follow the 504 plan. Is there some way I can help you with that? One of the things sometimes teachers can do, they feel overwhelmed with everything they have to do now, is to get another student to help them with that. So that the student reminds a child when he's forgotten something, or reminds him to write down the paper assignment. I like something called row captains. Now, if that's not possible and they aren't receptive and are in denial, then next I would try the guidance counselor and then the principal, because basically they're putting themselves in a position of possibly having a Section 504 hearing for not complying with what the 504 plan says they have to do.
Mm-hmm. So you shouldn't go in and basically storm the Bastille and get angry with everyone. Perhaps that's not the best way to approach it.
And that's how you feel in your guts, and that's what you'd love to do, but you will not be successful with that, unfortunately. You know, you've got to approach it with a certain level of objectivity and a positive attitude. And, you know, sometimes teachers just don't know and don't understand. Maybe you take them, you know, my one-page fact sheet, or you get some training for the school so that these teachers get it. They're just, and it's not going to be a quick answer, I'm sorry to say, but trying to patiently work through it. You know, the last line of approaching this is to change schools, but most of our kids don't want to change schools. They've got their friends, and so, you know, my gosh, Peter Jensen a long time ago said, our parents need a black belt in parenting. And it's absolutely true. I mean, it just wears us out. We're always scrambling to stay one step ahead of our child, and how can we tactfully tell him this?
Right. Well, we will have to end it there, Chris. Thanks very much. It's good to get the facts about such a timely and important topic. I know I've gotten lots to think about and do also. You've given us a lot of action points. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Have a good day, everyone.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.